Which brings us to the statement plan for neighbourhoods. Alex Norris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement on this government's plan for neighbourhoods. The defining mission of this government is delivering economic growth and driving up living standards. In that pursuit, we are determined that nowhere is left behind, because every member of this House will know that when our economy has prospered in the past, not everywhere has benefited. Indeed, over the last 14 years, decisions taken by the Conservatives have seen too many neighbourhoods fall into decline, with the most deprived areas suffering more than others. As we deliver our mandate for change, the £1.5 billion plan for neighbourhoods means that in 75 places across the UK that for too long have been underestimated and undervalued, this government will support the delivery of growth, access to opportunity and raise living standards. Because, Mr Speaker, when our local neighbourhoods thrive, the rest of the country thrives too. And our new plan for neighbourhoods marks the turning of the page on levelling up. Mr Speaker, this government will not repeat the mistakes of the past. No more micromanaged pots of money or pitting communities against one another to bid for them. The truth is, for all the promises about levelling up, the Tories' instinct was to hoard power and hold our economy back. 75 towns were promised funding that did not exist, with inflexible restrictions on how this money could be spent. Our plan for neighbourhoods stands in contrast to the Conservatives' unfunded and failed approach. And unlike the Tories' list of restrictive options for how towns could spend funding, we've doubled the policy activity that can be considered by neighbourhood boards and put communities at the heart of making these changes. The money will be spent on a broadened set of interventions, and it has completely different objectives, aligned to the missions the Prime Minister set out in our plan for change. For example, communities can now spend funding on the things that really matter to them, such as the modernisation of social housing, community-led housing, skills support, cohesion, childcare and much more. And we are making good on commitments made to deprived communities, giving each of the 75 places the certainty that they will receive up to £20 million of funding and support over the next decade. In many communities, work has already been undertaken, and we want to build on that rather than undoing it. That's why in each area we will support new neighbourhood boards, bringing together residents, local businesses and grassroots campaigners to draw up and implement a new vision for their area. For the first time, this will include representatives from social housing, workplace representatives, and in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, the representative in the devolved legislature. And in consultation with their community, each board will be given the freedom to decide how to spend the £2 million a year to deliver the priorities of local people, ranging from repairs to pavements and high streets, setting up community grocers, cooperatives, or even neighbourhood watches. And these new broadened objectives will give communities the tools to make informed decisions with a list of interventions aligned to this government's central missions. These interventions have already been assessed as demonstrating good value for money and so could be pursued without delay. And we've also published a toolkit outlining the wide-ranging powers available to communities and local authorities in England, with similar for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to come following consultation with the devolved governments. This is about giving communities autonomy, about people designing and delivering the change that they want to see. And our new approach puts communities at the heart of delivery, and that's why we've introduced 3 new objectives to guide the plan. First, the importance of building thriving places. People take immense pride in their local area, but too many of our high streets and estates have been neglected and left behind. This funding can be used to ensure town centres and neighbourhoods better reflect the needs of their community, giving residents a say in how they're designed, delivering change that people can see and identify with, so that at the end of this Parliament, people look out from their doorstep and see a better neighbourhood. We also want the UK to be a country with world-class public services that work for everyone, which is why this objective will also support services that are accessible, responsive and tailored to local need, because investing in young people's futures and in preventative measures now will ease pressure on services over the long term. The second aim is to build stronger communities. We want to empower neighbourhood boards to tackle the root causes of disengagement and division, to bring people together so they can feel proud of their area and safe in their neighbourhood, to restore a collective sense of belonging to their community. This is about understanding how division is not only an impediment to growth, but a barrier to driving up living standards too. And lastly, our third aim is to empower people to take back control. Everybody should be in the driving seat of their own life, and everybody should feel in control of their future. But this can feel a distant prospect when you're living payslip to payslip, stuck on a waiting list, or just not listened to. It is quite right that people want to have a say over the future of their community, with enough to get by and the opportunity to make the most of their lives. We want to make sure children have the best start in life too, and that adults can live the life that they want to. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to finish by talking about the inspiration for this programme, which can be traced back through 6 decades of community politics. We've drawn enormously from John Prescott and the Noble Baroness Armstrong's New Deal for Communities, which provided the stability of long-term funding backed by the support of central government. Like then, our aspiration is to empower local people to drive the renewal of their neighbourhood and deliver the transformational change they want to see. But this announcement also has its origins in the community development policies of Wilson and of Callaghan, who drew the link between social deprivation and social division. And now we're looking to the future. The Prime Minister has been clear that the task before us requires a decade of national renewal. And our country has all the necessary raw ingredients, untapped talent and potential across every town, city, village and estate. But we also have people without enough to get by and places and public services that have been hollowed out. Addressing this is the central driver of our plan for neighbourhoods, and this is just the start. We've already begun to deliver a real shift of power, aligned with the Deputy Prime Minister's broader work on devolution, on making work pay, on fixing the foundations of local government and of building decent homes. But it's also a down payment on what we know communities can achieve. We will give people and places the resources and powers they need to succeed. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, today's announcement is a response to anyone in these 75 places who wants to see change. It sends a message that the full force of government will be there to help them deliver it, and that's why I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister David Simmonds.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There's much in this statement that builds on the work of the previous government, and we share the new government's ambitions for the growth and the renewal of our neighbourhoods and our high streets, which are so fundamental to our constituents' quality of life. But as the Minister knows, there is a history behind this statement that links back to the desire of all of our constituents to have a proper say in the development of their home area. And in a country which is as grossly centralised by democratic standards as the UK, that local voice is vitally important. The EU cohesion funds that were the predecessor of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund were directly accountable both to the UK government and to local representatives. And in the short time frame within which the previous government's levelling up strategy was in effect, it sought to bring to bear a wide variety of national resources on exactly the challenges which the Minister has referred to in his statement. There was a £2.6 billion fund allocation for regeneration and communities, the £4.8 billion Levelling Up Fund, which was specifically designed to support treasured assets such as pubs and theatres where there was that strong community support, and the £1.5 billion long-term plan for towns. And we know local leaders welcomed that investment, and many members across the House spoke very warmly of the benefits to their constituents. So clearly it is a challenge to government today to set out how this very small and limited project sits against that much broader levelling up ambition, and in particular where this sits against the £3.6 billion Towns Fund set out under the previous government. But the House will acknowledge, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this statement comes at a time when this government's financial decisions are bearing down very heavily on our communities. The massive rise in national insurance contributions, the increases in business rates on pubs, retail businesses, hospitality, the changes to business property relief, and the multi-billion pound funding gap that opened up in council budgets as a result of the government's budget last October, all weigh very heavily in the balance against this modest announcement today. And that leaves aside the impact of the loss of things like the Rural Services Grant and the Community Ownership Fund, specifically targeted at delivering support for those communities that need it. So whilst, Madam Deputy Speaker, we do welcome this rebadging, this rehashing of a scheme which we progressed when in office, and its allocation to largely the same list of recipients, we do have some questions to put to the Minister. The first is around the accountability of the proposed neighbourhood boards. It is a significant concern that the Minister finds time to say that those boards will include trade union representatives, but not to mention the democratically elected representatives of these local communities, a trend which sits alongside the changes in the proposed planning white paper. Local democracy is vital if these boards are to work effectively. The second question is around a lack of a clear purpose for these resources. And whilst it sounds a positive thing to broaden the range of areas in which they can be spent, it's a serious concern that, again, the government chooses refurbishment and modernisation of social housing, something which is already allocated for in other areas of local government funding. And it begs the question, are these funds in fact going to make up shortfalls created by that budget in other areas of government spending? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, a real concern that the broadening of the criteria, and in particular the choice to allocate funding according to generalised national statistics rather than a local understanding of the level of need, mean that the way in which this resource will be allocated simply will not reflect the needs and the local circumstances. A bidding process allows local authorities, those that lead and represent those areas, who can identify particular needs, to come forward to government and present a plan. This process of allocation creates a serious risk that those who can do the most to regenerate and benefit our high streets and our communities lose out at the expense of those who are simply able to meet the criteria of Whitehall box ticking.
Minister.
I'm grateful to the opposition spokesperson for those questions. He's right in saying that this does build on the previous long-term plan for towns commitment, hence why we thought it was prudent to retain the same recipient areas. We think that promise would be made and should be kept, that promise should be kept. But what I would say to him is that it was astonishing to enter on my first day in government, to talk to civil servants and to find that this programme, a commitment, £1.5 billion commitment made by the previous government, was unfunded. It was funded on a reserve spent 3 times over. It's just simply no way to run a country. I am very, very pleased. I'm very, very pleased that we've been able to keep that commitment to those communities, because goodness knows there would have been disappointment had we not. He talks about its place in the wider environment. There is, of course, the transition year of shared prosperity funding, which we committed to at the budget, and we are now into a spending review period. And as I said in setting out, we're committed to getting the communities the tools and the resources that they need in order to shape place. With regards to his questions on accountability, of course local councils are still involved. What we're talking about here is change to neighbourhood boards that broaden it from the existing structure. So yes, we want local councils involved, we'd like local members of Parliament involved. As I said, we'd like the devolved representatives where they are there to be involved. But also we think that the voice of people who work in those communities is valuable. I'm surprised that the honourable gentleman doesn't. And then secondly, he talks about lack of clear purpose, and I think this is where we're in different spaces, because I believe in freedom to make those decisions locally. I believe that the expertise is held locally, that actually the wisdom for communities across this place is held by the local community rather than the minister. And that might be perhaps revelatory for a minister to say, but I believe that changing a community, whether you call it local growth, levelling up, or all the other things it's been called over the last 60 years, I believe it's an inside job. And I believe that that's done by those local communities best, and that my role as minister and our role as government is to get them the tools and the resources. That's why we differ on this point. And then I'm very surprised, not least because even the previous government had moved away from the bidding, the affection for the bidding process by the end of the last Parliament. They understood that it didn't work, that this debilitating parade, a beauty parade that pits communities against each other wasn't a very good way of getting money out to communities. But again, it's a point of difference. I believe in an allocative settlement that's longer term, that's more flexible, that's guided by people locally. They believe in shorter term bidding, they believe in central prescription, and that's a matter for the point. Well, the Secretary of State says from his sedentary position that offers value for value for money. What I believe is the best value for money is when communities have that proper tools and resources to shape place themselves on their criteria rather than mine. And I think that that's how you drive change.
Chair of the Select Committee, Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for this statement this afternoon. And I think if we are all honest, there are a number of us who've represented councils, who've been on councils, and some of us still serve on councils. And the reality is the competitive tendering process did, unfortunately, pit some councils against each other, including deprived councils. So I think it's right that we move away from that and the sticky plaster politics that we've seen over the last few years. I do want to press the Minister on understanding a bit more about how the neighbourhood boards will be set up and how they'll function. Will there be a clear recruitment process to get the critical local buy-in? As the Minister said, it's important that we bring communities along with us. If there is conflicts between local authorities and the boards over, say, for example, a regeneration plan, will one have the power to veto another? And will the department also have oversight to intervene should there be serious concerns about the intervention and operation? Alongside this, the Minister said that it's important for communities to have a say over their future. So I want to ask if the department are looking at the community right to buy. I declare my interest as a Labour co-op MP. And we know that with the community right to buy, we've seen local pubs, our libraries, leisure centres and so much more saved. So can he update us on the work on when we expect to see that new light and that legislation come forward?
Minister.
I'm grateful to the Chair of the Select Committee for those questions. I share what she says on competitive tendering. I think the quid pro quo for that is for the government of the day to be very, very clear about how allocations are made, and my commitment will be that we will be always very transparent in how those decisions are made, and I know that the Select Committee will take a strong interest in that. With regards to the establishment of boards, one of the themes I suspect of the discussion over the next few minutes will be that we don't want to hold back areas that are making great progress. There may be areas that have established boards who can take advantage of the opportunities to add some more people to them and move on at pace. There may be areas that want to take this moment as a chance to reboot their board. Either way, that basic principle that the local authority will be, of course, the kind of ring holder supported by the local Member of Parliament. But once that board's going, we expect that board to be in leadership. We don't want them to be in significant tensions with their councils, and we'd expect that to be resolved in the usual way. But those boards will have that power to get on with the job. With regards to the community right to buy, that was a component of the white paper. We're looking forward to delivering that community right to buy because we know that that would be greatly valued, whether it's pubs, whether it's other buildings in people's communities. So, you know, we're very keen on that, and as a fellow Labour and Co-op MP, I particularly am.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Liberal Democrats welcome this plan to work with communities to improve local amenities and engagement in the process. We also welcome the move away from the bidding between local council areas towards a more objective approach based, for example, on indices of multiple deprivation. In our opinion, and in my opinion, the previous system divisively pitted one area against another in a way that actually did damage to more areas than it helped. Liberal Democrats are committed to allowing communities to take the action they need to improve their areas. Given the sufficient powers, therefore resources, local authorities can play a major role in combating climate and nature emergencies, whether insulating homes, enhancing green spaces or improving air quality. But the Conservative governments force councils to do more and more with less and less, plunging many into financial crisis. As a result, councils have gone bankrupt around the country, and many are feeling the strain of cuts to public services and a lack of investment in community assets. No community can flourish without proper powers and resources. So we welcome this plan's commitment to ensuring new neighbourhood boards work with local authorities to implement new funding. However, we urge the government to confirm that local authorities will be funded and resourced substantially to take on this additional workload. The financial burden on councils has forced many of them to make impossible choices on funding. In my council of Somerset, for example, nearly 70% of council tax receipts go on care for vulnerable adults and children, which many believe should be a national responsibility. Until we have a national solution to the care crisis, councils will continue to be held back from reaching their full potential. So we welcome the government's commitment to investing in community-led improvement. We also welcome new neighbourhood boards, which should provide community engagement throughout the process. As such, we urge the government to reconsider its decision to remove district council level scrutiny in the planning process. Whitehall taking powers out of the decisions of hands of local councillors would also take decisions out of the hands of local people. That's undemocratic and would ultimately slow up the process of getting the homes that we need. We also call on the government to confirm that nature and climate specialists be included on the neighbourhood boards. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I ask the Secretary...
Can I remind the honourable member that there is a time limit? I will give him one more sentence.
Apologies, Madam Deputy Speaker. If I could ask whether the Secretary of State will be reviewing the list of 75 towns so that others can be included in future. And finally, would the government consider rolling the plans into neighbourhood plans so that they would be given more statutory effect in making planning decisions?
I'm grateful for those questions. I think on the point around climate and nature, we know that gaining consent from community often starts with buy-in, so having localised climate interventions through these programmes may well be a very good way to do that. On the point on local authorities, the budget was the first step in rebuilding local authority finances. That will take time. As he says, resolutions in social care will take some of that pressure off as well. With regards to planning, this is why local plans are so important. Not enough of the country is covered by local plans. Local people rightly want to say the best way to do that is through the local plan process. And on the 75 towns point, the ones that were previously announced are the ones that we have honoured. But of course, as he says, there may be scope to go further in the future. I can't run ahead of the spending review. But what we know that when if we can prove that things have worked in these 75 towns, then there'll be a very strong case to do them elsewhere.
Andy McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for his statement. The previous government admitted Labour's formulas which provided money to deprived urban areas needed to be undone. So I welcome the government's commitment to tackling deprivation. It is much needed. But as a local authority area, Middlesbrough has the lowest wages in the region and some of the worst statistics for deprivation in the qualifying metrics. So it's regrettable that no community in my constituency of Middlesbrough and Thornaby East has qualified for the long-term plan for towns, which is a legacy of the predecessor government's failed levelling up agenda. I fully understand the rationale in terms of the parameters and populations and the need to follow through on promises previously made. But can the Minister confirm what steps he's taken to move on from their pork barrel politics and provide assurance that the government's determination is to invest in the deprived urban areas not served in today's announcement?
Minister.
I'm grateful for that question and for the chance to reiterate, yes, we wanted to honour the commitments made to those 75 communities. We felt that was the decent thing to do. Our commitment, as I've made at this dispatch box previously, is in the future we will have clear allocative formulas based on deprivation and need, and we will go where the data says. Too many times in the past, ministers sought to go where the politics were. That didn't serve those communities or this country. We will do much better in the future.
Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will understand that in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield we were delighted to receive the funding from the last government for the Towns Fund, and we are very grateful, I think in the words that he used, that he has honoured that commitment from that dispatch box. May I also thank the Minister for the courtesy he has shown in the discussions that he and I have had about this previously. I very much hope that, as I mentioned to him before, that he will come on a state visit to the royal town of Sutton Coldfield, where we will be able to show him the delights of the town, but also show him how very well we will ensure that this taxpayers' money is spent.
Yeah. Minister.
I'm very grateful for that and for the conversations I've had with the honourable gentleman. There is something of the 75 areas chosen, there is something different about his to all the others in that for every other one, the connection is to the local council. In this case, it's the town council. He knows that I'm a very big proponent of town and parish councils. And I say that he wears a heavy weight as a result that we, to demonstrate that this is a model that works, because it could be a model that could be used again in the future. So I'm looking forward to working with him, and of course I'll come and visit.
Melanie On.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes are delighted to be included in the list of 75 towns in receipt of this long-term funding. That certainty is something that has been missing from previous financial commitments. I'm particularly interested, however, in the governance arrangements going forward, because what we've seen under the previous arrangements of town board deals is that decisions have been made, in my case, money reallocated that was intended for the library to go into parts of projects that have been left to go to delay and incur extra costs. So could he reassure my constituents that there is an opportunity to review the governance arrangements of these new neighbourhood boards?
Minister.
Yes, now is the time to review those boards. In the fullness of we'll be asking for that by the end of next month. And then beyond that, there will be the moment for those boards to formulate plans over the next few months. That is the moment to get down in writing how that money is going to be used to make that commitment, that contract with the local community. And I hope and I'm sure that we'll see communities really involved in those conversations so that the plans really reflect what people locally want.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister made a reference to his support for parish and town councils. Can he explain a little more about the new neighbourhood boards? Will the geographical footprint of the new boards be similar to that of parish and town councils in the 75 areas concerned? And if so, wouldn't it have been better to give this role to elected bodies like the parish and town councils rather than to unelected new boards?
Minister.
Well, the elected body that will be the fund holder will be a local authority. As I say, there's only one case where it differs from one of the other councils other than parish and towns. With regards to boundaries, these reflect the human geographies rather than the political geographies. There may be points where that aligns, maybe they won't. The best models, I think, will have that local political say as well as that local community say. I think that balance is one that could be found. If there are concerns about boundaries, now is a very short moment where that could be revisited. I don't think in fact, there isn't big flexibility to completely change the scope, but if there are sensible tweaks that could be made, then of course we will have those conversations.
Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's really welcome that today's plan finally delivers on the unmet promises made to these communities from the previous government's long-term plan for towns. But since the selection methodology in that plan was developed, Pendleton in Salford has sadly lost its only leisure centre and pool to fire, leaving a community already starved of leisure facilities with nothing at all. So would the Minister meet with me to discuss what help the government can give Salford in ensuring that this vital facility is rebuilt urgently?
Minister.
I'm very sad to hear of that fire and of course very happy to take that meeting.
Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Liberal Democrats and I welcome the plan's commitment to social housing and ensuring development is community-led. However, it's disappointing that Somerset won't feel the benefit, given the demand for social housing in Glastonbury and Somerton and across the county vastly outweighs supply. So can the Minister confirm if there are plans to extend the plan to allocate further funding in addition to the 75 local authorities confirmed today?
Minister.
Well, the Honourable Lady knows I can't run ahead of the spending review. There are other funds, of course, that are available, the Enhanced Local Government Settlement, there's the Shared Prosperity Fund, but of course, if we can prove this as an effective model, there may be scope in the future to extend.
Helena Dollymore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And for all the talk of levelling up from the party opposite, I would just gently remind them of the experience of my constituents in Hastings and Rye of levelling up, which is that £150,000 of taxpayers' money was given to a Conservative donor to improve Hastings Town Centre, and all we have left behind is a boarded-up closed shop in the town centre of Hastings. So I really welcome today the commitment from the Minister of £20 million for Hastings, and that money to be spent in a responsible way that is based on the priorities of my constituents in Hastings and Rye, whether that be broken pavements, whether that be broken bus shelters, or buying back community assets that are so important, from pubs to closed concert venues. I know there's a lot of concern in Hastings about St Mary in the Castle. So can the Minister explain how residents of Hastings can feed into the process for how this money is spent?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that, and I'm aware of the history that the Honourable Member mentions. I hope for Hastings this will be a reboot moment and a chance to get some of that benefit that the community undoubtedly wants to see. The plan will be very quickly to get a board in place and then to develop a neighbourhood plan. I exhort them to engage their community as best as possible. There's some brilliant examples. Chesterfield springs to mind, Arbroath springs to mind, that I'm sure those communities would be generous with their experience of how to do it well.
Stephen Gettins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister and I had a very consensual exchange yesterday at questions, and he knows that Arbroath has been exceptional in this. So can he assure me that where communities have good structures, those structures will be kept, and that funding is welcome? But similarly, I think it's fair to say there was some disappointment in areas like Perth and Dunfermline, but also there's been some disappointment about the promises that were not kept by those who backed leaving the EU in terms of some of the lifeline funding that came from the European Union. Can he give some of his thoughts on that and how we match some of that up? And finally, will he absolutely assure us that devolution will absolutely be respected in terms of any plans going forward?
Minister.
Yes, I mean, as I said yesterday, it was impossible in that church hall to not be struck by the extent of the consultation in Arbroath, which I think is a model for elsewhere. Of course, with regards to devolution, we see this through the prism that, as the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister have said about wanting to reset relationships with the devolved governments. I've had those conversations, as the Honourable Gentleman may know. I'll continue to do so. Having the representatives from the devolved legislature involved in the board, I think, is a positive step. We don't want to hold back progress where areas have made significant progress, so they should move on at pace, and I believe we'll be able to make these relatively minor tweaks which will be needed in their cases and move forward at great pace. And then with regards to previous structural funds, we were able to deliver what we could during this budget, and what's coming forward will be looked at as part of the spending review.
Before I call Matt Rodder, can I just let the Honourable Member for Torbay know that I'll be coming to him next. Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I also thank the Minister and welcome the overall thrust of this important area of policy, putting communities at the heart of regeneration and investment. I have a couple of questions for the Minister, and I appreciate Reading unfortunately has missed out this time around. I hope we're successful in the future. Could he perhaps explain how successful initiatives such as High Street Action Zones will be incorporated into this sort of work, and indeed other initiatives such as assets of community value and other local matters which have helped communities to rebuild and re-energise their areas?
Minister.
I think this is a really important point. There is, well meant, I believe, but not very efficient. That what we've seen over recent years was that accumulation of various different strands of levelling up funding that was less than the sum of its parts. And one of the challenges within that is you lose that great insight. So we absolutely will be drawing on the best from whether it's high street accelerators or community ownership fund and assets of community value, and sharing that insight not just with those winning 75 recipients, but instead with the rest of the country as well.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Torbay is the premier resort in the United Kingdom. However, behind our palm trees and Victorian villas is the most deprived council in the west of England. So it is truly welcome, Minister, that Torbay is amongst those 75. We have sadly had that pregnant pause whilst the new government walked through the wreckage left by the previous Conservative government of the finances, but it is very welcome that this money is coming to bear. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it's really heartening that this is over a number of years so we can have confidence of how to support our communities. But it resulted in a pregnant pause that I know myself and my colleague from Eastbourne are particularly concerned about, as we have oven-ready opportunities for our communities. And rather than a further months of delay, is it possible, and I know I've already written to the Minister on this issue, is it possible that we can pre-spend after conversations with the Minister, rather than having to run to even more delays of implementing the changes that we all desperately want to see for our local communities?
I am grateful for the Honourable Gentleman's forbearance and for his consistent lobbying. The programme starts from 2026, I want to be very clear about that, and that cannot be brought forward. Local authorities do have the flexibility to spend earlier, understanding that the money's coming, but that, of course, would be a decision for them to take locally.
Joe Platt.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Minister and his department for today's announcement and their commitment to lead in the plan for neighbourhoods. And as my honourable friend knows, my community in Lee is home to some amazing community organisations and businesses working hard to improve our area, but they've been doing it alone for too long. So today's cash boost for Lee changes that. And does he agree that this plan marks the first step towards a new partnership where communities are supported and empowered to shape the places that they call home?
Yeah, I know of Lee's great creativity, not least in the spinner's mill that my honourable friend used to run. From our perspective, we want this to be a reset of the way in which the central government works with local communities, so to unleash that creativity, because, as I was saying, I think it was seen by the opposition to be revelatory. I believe the people of Lee should make decisions about the future of Lee rather than myself.
Gregory Campbell.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, you went from Mr. Speaker to Madam Deputy Mayor in half an hour, so I wish you all the best for the future. If I could just welcome the Minister's statement. It is indeed very welcome in Northern Ireland, and it affects Coleraine and Londonderry in my patch. Could he also reassure us that as we look forward, the 10 years is most particularly welcome, which allows for planning and proposals to be put in place? But can he assure us that towards the end of this Parliament, that we will review the plan to see if it is possible to develop it and become very focused in trying to get benefit for our constituents?
Yes, this is a really important point. We do think that, because plans do take time to gear up, that there might not be a uniform spend, exactly £2 million every year, and there might be some flexibilities. That's why I think that length of time is valuable. But after the 4th year, we will do a stock take, because you don't want to be in a situation where places are spinning their wheels, building up a huge backlog of funding. It has to be realistic. So exactly as he says, by the end of this Parliament, we'll have that full stock take.
Terry Jeremy.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Minister for this very positive statement today. I'm naturally delighted that my hometown of Thetford in South West Norfolk will receive a share of this money. It really is going to help unlock Thetford's potential. But after 14 years of so much decline, what measures will be taken to make sure this money is spent as quickly as possible and to make as much of a difference as possible in the short term?
Well, we will work very closely with Thetford and with all the other recipients so that they have the best possible insight as to what's effective and to what some of the good practices elsewhere. We will have we have developed as part of the prospectus a series of pre-approved interventions, so Thetford could pick from those to know that these are ones that have already been assessed as having value for money. So the information and that insight should be there to build a really effective plan really quite quickly.
Lee Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Plan for Neighbourhoods prospectus that was published on the website earlier today talks about ending the Whitehall knows best culture. And so with that in mind, would the Minister consider the current allocation of 75% capital, 25% revenue, that if that split needed to be changed in a local area, that the Minister would consider that? And also within the Minister's statement, the Minister says about giving communities autonomy and designing and delivering the change they want to see. I'm sure all communities in the UK would wish to have that autonomy. So how could maybe the principle of neighbourhood boards be rolled out even if the funding isn't there to begin with?
Minister.
Well, absolutely we'd want to see those boards meeting. I actually know from other areas where they've kind of anticipated and set up their boards early, they've asked them to do other things as well, which I think is a really good sign of mature partnership. On the revenue capital split, I'm afraid there isn't flexibility, though that is heard. And again, as part of the evaluation, we will see what's effective. But I'm afraid what's been agreed in the budget is what's agreed.
Frank McNally.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I commend my honourable friend for the statement today and wholly welcome the up to £20 million for the town of Coatbridge in my constituency, and I'm grateful to him for taking the time last year to speak to me about the former Towns Fund. Coatbridge was earmarked for levelling up funding, but that was put at risk by the previous government announcing the plans, but cynically, yet perhaps unsurprisingly, failing to identify how they would fund them. Yeah. So does my honourable friend agree with me that by delivering this funding, it is this government that is supporting regeneration in Coatbridge, putting local people and local businesses at the heart of decision making to provide much needed jobs and growth?
Minister.
Yes, I absolutely would. When my honourable friend came to visit me in my office, I felt that he and his colleagues had come rather as wallet inspectors, and that I wasn't going to get away with the shirt on my back. But I have to be really candid. As I said then, I really didn't know whether we would be able to find the funding to deliver this programme, which is why I'm overjoyed that we have. Those promises were made, and they needed to be kept to the people of Coatbridge and beyond.
Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to thank the Minister for his commitment and his assurances today. Not least on behalf of the people of Peterhead, which is in my constituency. Now, the Right Honourable Member for New Forest East asked him about the geographical footprint of these new bodies, and I want to press him on that because it would be important to be clear that there would be scope within the reorganisation of these boards that they might be able to extend their footprint. Will you be able to comment on that, please?
Yes, it's not an unfamiliar ask that colleagues have made. As I say, we could not support boundary changes that really changed the nature of where the area was. If you went up to a population of 1 million people, it would cease to be the programme that it was. However, if there are common sense changes that could be made, we will look at those very closely, and now would be a really good moment for local authority and local MP to come forward with such an idea.
Sarah Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Like the Minister, I'm proud to be a Labour and Cooperative MP, and today's announcement is a great win for our movement, putting power where it belongs in our communities. In areas like mine in Warrington South, community can be found in our proud grassroots sports teams. Can the Minister update us on what more can be done to empower fans to own and shape their local sports teams?
Minister.
Well, we are very enthusiastic about fan ownership. We are, of course, through the fan-led review taking forwards many things with related to football. The Community Ownership Fund, we just had its final round just before Christmas, which again, in many cases, had a sporting element to it. There is the Shared Prosperity Fund too, through the local authority that can support sports teams. But we understand that sports teams and sports facilities and sports fields are a huge part of local communities, and we are committed to making sure that local communities have control and have that security of knowing that they're going to be there at the heart of their community.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to welcome the Minister's statement today and the vision that will truly transform communities and constituencies like mine. And I'm made up that Kirkby will get a massive funding boost under this government's plan as a part of that. Knowsley is the second most deprived area in the country. Yet communities across the constituency never stop working to improve their home. Like Centre 63 in the heart of Kirkby, a vital youth and community hub that was opened by my illustrious predecessor, Harold Wilson, who the Minister mentioned in his statement. So I would like to invite the Minister to meet with me to discuss how we could give Knowsley more power, funding and resources we need to shape the place that we call home.
Minister.
I absolutely support the points my honourable friend makes. I know that the people of Knowsley are very proud of the communities that make up Knowsley. I was very pleased to visit recently and to talk to the Honourable Lady and her local authority, who really have a strong sense of local purpose. And I'd be very happy to have similar conversations about this plan to support Kirkby and much more.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister? Today's statement and announcement is incredibly welcome, and I am most grateful, not least for my constituency of Western Bartonshire and my hometown of Clydebank, set to receive up to £20 million of funding. And I also met with the Minister last year on this. Can the Minister confirm that my hometown of Clydebank will decide how best to use this funding to transform Clydebank Town Centre, to ensure that the investment has maximum transformational impact on my community, and that this demonstrates that this UK Labour government is delivering for Western Bartonshire and delivering for Scotland?
Minister.
Yes, I totally agree, and I know that in the Honourable Gentleman's community, because he said this to me, there is a proud sense of identity and a desire to have those tools that means they can shape their community. That's what we're doing through this programme, and I know that he will be a proud champion of getting resident voice into those local plans to make sure that they're as effective as possible.
Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I say I warmly welcome the announcement by the Minister of the Plan for Neighbourhoods, which replaces the unfunded promises left by the last government, and in particular the fact that it gives communities far more agency to decide how the money is spent. However, I'm sure the Minister will appreciate that other communities across the country will have their noses pressed against the proverbial shop window, including my constituency of Dartford, where we have projects like the Swampscombe Pavilion in dire need of funding to bring them back to life, and it's been great to be able to discuss that particular project with the Minister. Could he give an indication of how we might build on this great programme throughout the Parliament to provide investment for critical projects which are outside the designated 75 places?
Minister.
I think the Honourable Gentleman very succinctly expresses that strength of feeling from colleagues today. As I say, we're going into a spending review phase, so that may be a good moment for those conversations. And with regards to that particular pavilion, I enjoyed the conversation we had about that. And again, I look to support the Honourable Gentleman in whatever way we can to try and find a solution there.
And the final question, John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, I know that the list of areas was the one that the Minister inherited. I think it was a truly brilliant statement, because it spoke of a stronger community, of pride in place. It spoke of the need for thriving communities. And I want to pay tribute to the Minister for visiting Rugby, doing a walk around, holding a round table with me. And he saw that local borough council leaders, my colleagues, Labour borough council ministers, are doing all of those things and working hard to achieve all of those things. He saw a vibrant community, business sector, and I hope the Minister will work with them so that they can learn some of the lessons from this absolutely superb plan for our neighbourhoods going forward.
Hey. Minister.
I greatly enjoyed my visit to Rugby. There was there's public art, these oblong-shaped public art that took me more than an hour to realise were rugby balls, and hence the rugby pun. So perhaps not my sharpest day, but I really enjoyed the session that we had with local business, with local community, with the local authority, and it was impossible to not come away with that with the sense of knowing that the community of rugby really had a grip of where it wanted to go in the future, and that for our role as government and our department, our job is to give them the tools and resources to make that a reality.
That concludes the